really all going on there in northern Syria. So when Paul says he went away to Arabia, and then he came back after 3 years, I think he's talking about going up to Edessa, northern Syria. And Josephus says that this woman, Queen Helen, had 2 sons. And this merchant Ananias got into her home environment. And he had another unnamed companion that he doesn't mention. Don't forget, Ananias is the person acts as Paul met in Damascus when he was supposedly blinded. To me, that's all the fictionalized Paul. In any case, Helen's sons were reading the Bible, the Torah, Genesis, about Abraham's conversion, about Abraham's circumcision. You know, Paul's very anti-circumcision in Galatians and other letters that I've shown. And James is called the leader of the party of the circumcision. James is representative of, I'm not caring, as I told you before, for or against circumcision. That's not my thing that I'm trying to emphasize. I'm just trying to say that's what distinguishes the two. And as we said before, circumcision is the sign of the covenant. So the James party was obviously saying, before you're heir to the promises of the covenant, you must come in under the covenant, which is a reasonable position to some extent to take. You want to be heirs to the covenant. You have to first come into the covenant. Which is why the Sicarii, in that other version of Josephus I mentioned, were threatening to kill anyone who was discussing the law was not circumcised. Because you couldn't discuss the law, according to Hippolytus, as I told you, the end of last time version of the Sicarii Essenes, unless you first come into the law. Which is why I think the people in Acts who took an oath on themselves, with an oath we have cursed ourselves, not to eat or drink, like James doesn't eat or drink wine, doesn't eat meat or drink wine, not to eat or drink till we have killed Paul. I think that's authentic episode. It's in the We document material. The We document in Acts begins, I've told you, after chapter 16. And that's very different from anything before that in Acts. The Damascus Road material is around chapter 8 or 9 or 10. That's a different kind of material. The We document material is obviously based on a travel diary of somebody, and I would assume it's Lucius of Cyrene, or whatever he's called in other environments. Lucius and Lucas are, one's Greek and the other's Latin. But in any case, Josephus has this whole thing in the Antiquities, not in your war. Chapter 20 of the Antiquities begins with Queen Helen's conversion. It's a very big deal for Josephus. And also in rabbinic literature, Queen Helen's conversion is a very big thing. The rabbis, rabbinic literature, thinks she converts to rabbinic Judaism. But in Josephus doesn't tell what form. He just says that Ananias and another unnamed companion got in among Helen's people and said that you didn't have to be circumcised. Because Helen supposedly had a horror of circumcision, thought her subjects would hold her in a negative view. Well, what happens is her 2 sons, which is why I kind of dedicate my James book to her 2 sons, or at least the offspring of her. I mentioned Lord Wingate was one of the persons I dedicated the James book to, and the other one was, I guess it was the 2 sons of the Ethiopian queen, I call them, in my consensus review in the New York Times, who've been put up to do a hatchet job with the James book. I said, oh, Eisenman doesn't even know that these 2 people are not even the sons of the Ethiopian queen. Yeah, because he didn't get up to chapter 22 of that book where I talk about who the Ethiopian queen is. And that it's really this Queen Helen of Adiabene is a parody of her. And these 2 sons that fought in the first engagement of the war in Josephus, what were their names? Kennedaeus and, what was the other one's name? Anyway, Helen's 2 descendants, perhaps, maybe not her sons, died in the first engagements of the war against Rome. So I think Queen Helen was involved in financing the war against Rome. Her descendants were involved in that situation. In any case, Josephus spends a lot of time on this conversion. He says that her two sons, Monobasus and Isat. Isat is the oldest one. He's her favorite. We're reading how, I think it's chapter 17 of Genesis says, and the angel appeared to Abraham and he circumcised everybody, and then he circumcised all the people that were traveling with him. And then this other teacher comes, Eliezer from Galilee, and says to the two boys, or the two young men, do you understand the meaning of what you are reading? And they immediately went out and circumcised, had themselves circumcised. And in the book of Acts, you'll remember Philip, who was supposed to be the treasurer of the Ethiopian queen, who comes to Jerusalem to pay homage to Jesus, supposedly. And there was no Ethiopian queen at this time, any place, anywhere, anyway. It's the sort of climax of my James book. He jumps up on the chariot of the eunuch of the Ethiopian queen, who's bearing her, who's her treasury agent. And he's reading the Bible, and Philip says to him, do you understand the meaning of what you are reading? And he's reading Isaiah 53:11, the key scriptural basis of the Christian understanding of Jesus' death. And I forget, he took our sins upon himself, he was wounded for us, and so on and so forth. I think you've all heard of parts of Isaiah 53:11. And then the eunuch immediately got down from the chariot and was baptized. And then Philip evaporated. To me, that's a parody of the Queen Helen's son story, reversed. That's how important Damascus really is in all this. And the land of Damascus is the whole area, or Arabia. And the eunuch is a parody of circumcision, because the Romans saw circumcision as bodily mutilation, as a eunuch would do.